My name is James Okumu. This morning we are on to Parenting Tuesday. But before we engage in that, Samuel, how are you doing today? Listening in Nakuru, you say you will make a call before the end of the week to forgive the person who offended you. And you will also invite them to forgive you. So help you God. May God give you the strength. Samuel, I'll get in touch with you. I'll give you the Bible I'm giving out today. Thank you for your response. This morning, Parenting Tuesday, we have been on a journey for the last couple of Tuesdays talking about child abductions and kidnapping and looking at this subject from different angles. And today we are wrapping up that series and we want to talk about what if they never come back? What if that child is abducted and they never come back? Because we hear cases like those. Never come back meaning you don't know whether they are alive or dead. There are those instances where the child goes missing, and we've seen several stories in the dailies, sad stories. The child is abducted and they end up being killed. I'm not talking about that kind of a situation. I'm talking about the kind of situation where they go and they've disappeared and you don't know where they are and you don't know whether they are alive or dead, and nihivotu, you're hanging in there. So this morning, I'm so blessed to hang out with two counseling psychologists. I've got Jen Gatia. Jen Gatia, how are you doing?
Good morning, James.
It's good to see you. Karibu sana.
Asante.
Awesome. We also have counseling psychologist Mary Waihoro. Mary, how are you doing? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good morning, James, and thank you for the chance to be here this morning.
Asante sana. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
I think we'll begin by asking the question, maybe I can throw this one to you, Jane. Why do you think there's been an upsurge in the number of abductions we have been seeing in the country? Children disappearing. Why is it happening now?
Well, whereas we may not have any one way of answering that question, it is obvious that child abduction is a crime. And we have seen an increase in crimes in the recent past. So that is one of them. And probably the person who is perpetrating that kind of crime or offense is looking for, self-satisfaction.
Yeah.
There are always different reasons why different people would want to get into that kind of situation. But it is unfortunate that a child does not have to be the victim. Whereas we are not saying that adults need to be, because the child is quite defenseless. And probably that's why children will be a target for many such perpetrators of child abduction. Okay. It's just unfortunate, James, that it is happening.
Oh yeah, it is very unfortunate. I'm wondering, what are the possible emotions that parents would go through when their child goes missing, Mary? What would be their state of mind in a situation like that?
Thank you, James. The initial emotions that come with that is shock, the denial, the disbelief, the questions that are never answered. What happened? Where is my loved one? The sense of anger, trying to look for, as you try to look for the answers of what happened, sometimes anger comes in. Feelings of insecurity because of the children who are left maybe behind, or other family members, because you really do not know who did what they did. Suspicion, you become suspicious on everybody. The issue of mistrust comes in. You don't know who to trust, because some of these things are perpetrated by close family members sometimes are involved, or maybe family or people who know this child. So there's that sense of we do not know who to trust anymore. Also, the feelings of sense of helplessness. It's a situation that makes you feel so helpless. You don't know where to start. Yet as a parent, you're supposed to be protecting your child. And then you're here feeling, I was not able to protect my own. So that also sense of feeling of loss of control as a parent So there's a lot of emotional torture, living in fear every day,
Yes.
because you do not know whether this enemy can strike again. So there's that part of living in fear. There's the denial aspect, of course. And then there are also intrusive thoughts that happen every other day. You're not sure. You are always in in a state of thinking what could have happened. Is the child dead? So
Yes.
there's a lot of emotional torture that happens when there's abduction. And with abduction then comes the ambiguous loss. It is a loss that you can't exactly define. Is the person gone totally? Are they dead? Are they alive? What is happening to my child, wherever it is that they are?
Yeah.
Are they being tortured? Are they okay? So there's so much that happens that takes away, a lot of energy, and takes a lot of peace away
Yes.
from the person and from the family that has been left behind.
Okay. Jane, I'm just wondering, it's one thing if a child is abducted and you receive a call and they're telling you if you want your child back, maybe pay this amount of money or do this and this and that. But then there are those instances where your child goes back and there's no communication and you don't know right from left, beginning from end. How do you deal with that? Because it's like you're walking in the dark. You have no idea whether they're safe or they're being tortured. You have no idea whether they're alive or they're dead. How do you handle that kind of a situation?
Thank you for that question, James. That's a very important question to ask, and definitely to get a response for. As Mary has said, the first thing is that confusion, and of course, where do I go from here?
Yes.
Sometimes, other than maybe reporting to the police or to the law enforcers, the parents may not know where do we go next, where do we start, and probably that is very important. Even that kind of feeling of where do I start, where do I go? Nevertheless, it is important first to acknowledge that there is something unusual that has happened. There is a loss that has occurred, because that's a kind of loss. Delay which cannot be praised, is neither here nor there. So that acknowledgement is very important. But the family or the parents who have lost, probably in quotes and quotes, their child, need to look for someone to work with.
Okay.
They definitely need support. As Mary says, there is that emotional turmoil, there is the thoughts, the confusion, and definitely there's the physical, turmoil that comes in. The person cannot settle, the person cannot feed, they cannot sleep, and all that is detrimental to the wellness of the family. So the parents or the close relatives to the abducted child, once they realize the child is actually abducted, they need to get someone to support them. And this someone who is going to support them should be a person, again, who will give the most needed support, probably identify what do they need most. Of course, the thought of the child should come back is always top on the list. But also being able to accept, yes, and we are searching, maybe work with them even physically, go where they need to go, probably follow up, with the necessary procedures, where will the child be found. Sometimes maybe there could be those, anonymous callers who call and says things.
Yeah.
So it is still necessary to have someone on the side. In my opinion, that is the most critical thing. Of course, trusting in God and someone who can even pray with them. If they believe that things can change, if they believe in that direction, it is also very important to do so. And that kind of support, which is more of giving empathy as opposed to sympathy, is very powerful. It keeps the person going. It helps them to sort themselves out and even to be able to think clearly, because there's somebody who can identify some of those needs. Wow. That's how I think it should all begin, James.
I'm wondering, Mary, as a parent, do you ever stop hoping If you have no idea where this child is, there's an SMS here that says, I happened to serve a lady who went missing when she was 11. She was now 35 and she hadn't returned to her dad's home. She left Kakamega and was in Malindi all this time. Imagine, alitoroshwa na relative. She was devastated and her kids were also devastated, and I advised her to go back to her father. So I'm just trying to think about this father. This child went missing when she was 11. I mean, she's now 35. You've never heard from her. As a parent, do you ever stop hoping? And if you hold on to that hope and it seems like it's not bearing fruit, what does that do to you as a parent, Mary?
Yeah, thank you, James. And you know, those are common cases where a person has disappeared and come back after 20 years, after 30 years. Those are common cases. And therefore, as a parent, then, it is actually almost impossible to totally accept that the child has gone. And as a parent, you'll keep hoping that one day your child can appear. Those are normal feelings because you see, with abduction comes now that a being was lost. You are not very sure whether this person is totally gone.
Yeah.
Do I do the rituals that the society tells me to do? Do I bury maybe a banana bark, or do I bury something? Do I find closure?
Yes.
But then there's always that hope as a parent that one day your child may actually appear. So the truth is, because there's no closure, it's like it's been left. You know, so many other things and so many thoughts and a lot of hope is, as a parent, you keep hoping and hoping one day maybe my child will appear.
Yes.
So you are, as a parent, you're in that state where you are not very, very sure which way do I go. A very torturous state for a parent to be. Yeah. So, like we are saying, yes, as a parent, you may never have total closure on that part of your child's life.
Okay. But shortly we'll talk about that lack of closure, Jane. Does it affect one's life? Could you get yourself in a space where now even your life is on pause because you're still hoping for this child to come back and they're never coming back? It's like your whole life becomes now focused on huyu mtoto alipotea. You're always thinking about them. You're trying to pursue different avenues to see how you can get them back, but nothing is bearing fruit. Can that hope lead you to a place where your life comes to a standstill? We'll talk about that shortly. At 7:30, we are asking the question, what if your child never comes back? The series this month has been on child abductions and kidnappings. If you have a question for us, or maybe you want to share an experience like this individual has shared with us, please feel free to do so. 20316 is the SMS line. WhatsApp number 0786 316 316. It is Parenting Tuesday. What if they never come back home? We are finishing our series for this month on child kidnappings and abductions. I've got two counseling psychologists with me in studio via Zoom. We have got Mary Waiharo and Jane Ngatia helping us to gain a deeper understanding of how to deal with a situation where if your child is abducted and they never come back home, how do you deal with that? So Jane, I was saying earlier, is there a possibility of your life coming to a standstill because you're holding on to this hope and now it's like every resource in your life is channeled towards finding this child?
That's a very important question and also very, very, confusing and also very sad. We cannot say that the parent who has lost, their child or their loved one will ever come to a closure.
Okay.
Actually, sometimes we think as psychologists that when someone dies, it's definite. We know the end has come.
Yeah.
And we don't expect anything beyond there. But when a person goes missing, we cannot be sure of where they are. And hopefully, the worst that we imagine is probably they'll never come back. Sometimes a person even wishes, this is usually verbalized, that I wish I even saw my child back alive or dead. I mean, so that that matter can be closed. Otherwise, the person continues searching day in, day out. Actually, we even say the person is grounded completely.
Oh.
They get grounded. They could be moving every morning. They could be look like they are back to work. They are doing their things, but psychologically they are completely stuck. And probably they are even the health, their mental health is very, very devastated. It is not good at all. So the closure is not easy. As I have said, I'd rather, the person may even say, I'd rather they were dead and I buried them and what have you. Even though that is not what they really would desire.
Yeah.
So the person gets grounded. Sometimes we call it complicated, compounded grief, because they are mourning, but they don't know what they are mourning for. I mean, in which direction. So it can be difficult throughout the person's life. That's what it means. They are mourning every day of their life.
Wow. Mary, I'm just wondering about a parent in this situation, and you have other children. How do you even parent these other children? Because there's a possibility of it seeming like ule alipotea ndio wa maana sana kushinda wale wamebaki. So as a parent, how do you deal with that? Because if you have other children, they still need their mom, they still need their dad. How do you do that?
Wow, a very good question, James, which is very true. The person that is lost actually seems like the most important. And it is possible for a parent to forget they have other children. That's why we are saying that it's important that we have a support system for this particular parent or for these particular parents, so that they can be reminded by others that, you know what, you have other children right here and they need you. And as a parent, you cannot be replaced. So for a while, it is true, a parent may seem to actually forget and just concentrate so much on looking for other, for the lost child. Does that mean this parent does not care about the others? No. Remember, this is a parent, this is a human being who is also going through now a kind of a grief. And it is important to accept that temporarily this parent may actually be unable to totally function the way they would have functioned before. So it is important that we accept that, so that as the support system, then we are able to help this particular parent to actually get up again on their feet and help them again. What can we do as the support system or the family that is surrounding this family during loss is to step in where it is possible. The aunties can step in to just help out when this parent is a bit paralyzed. Friends can step in to support the children, but eventually the parent has to come back and do what they need to do. They have to get the support, be it from the counselors, be it from the church, be it from the people around them, so that they can be up on their feet again. But the truth is, this parent may never totally be able to again function totally the way they were actually functioning before.
Sometimes I'm just thinking, Mary, in situations like that, for the support group, we may end up saying some insensitive things. Things like, ashukuru Mungu si wote walichukuliwa. At least tuko na hao wengine, shughulikia hao wengine, ule alienda. So I'm just wondering, how, as the support group, what are some things we ought to be sensitive about?
All right.
Yeah.
So, Jane, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Whichever.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Mary. Yes, when something like this happens, remember we are saying it's a kind of grief that is neither here nor there. And those supporting have to be very sensitive. Actually, allow me to start by saying that family unity at this point is very important.
Okay.
Whether there were other children or not, it is very important. And the parents who have lost their child need to be allowed to talk about it as much, as frequently as they possibly can. And at that time, there need to be someone who is listening. And that is the point at which Mary says they need someone to walk with them.
Okay.
What is the role of this person? This person or this other family is expected to be giving a hearing, ear. They need to be listening, because listening in itself is also very therapeutic. Listening to the emotions that are being expressed, listening to the thoughts that are coming out, listening even to that confusion itself, listening to that hopelessness.
Yes.
That is very, very important. It will keep these people going. But also, if the child was in a family setting where the other children or other people living with them, it's good that they talk collective loss, so that even that member of the family, especially the mother, probably equally the father, can feel this, that sharing, shared grief, shared loss. That is very important. But we always say that it's important for a person giving support. That caregiver, so to speak, need to stop getting curious about too many things, about, questioning every situation. Where was the child? Where did you leave the child alone? I mean, you should have foreseen this, kind of like a blame game.
Yes.
And making the parent or the people who have gone through this loss feel guilty. That should not happen. It is a matter of being there. Actually, just the presence of a caregiver, presence of someone who seems to care, is extremely therapeutic, emotionally, physically, and even psychologically. And that keeps the person going. That does not mean that things may change much, because that in itself may not change things, but being there is a very important thing. And avoiding the blame game.
Yes.
That is seriously not necessary.
Okay.
That's my take, James.
Okay, I like that. Avoid the blame game. How does this affect a parent's parenting skills? Because I'm just trying to put myself in a situation where I'm facing this kind of thing. I'm thinking one of my most immediate reaction would probably be that I will become overprotective of my other children. Maybe even not allow them to go out or not allow them to talk to strangers. I'm just wondering, Mary, what are some of the ways this affects how I will parent the children that are there?
Thank you, James. Yes, the truth is, things that happen in life, and this one being one very particular situation that can bring a lot of doubt as a parent. Actually, it can bring a lot of doubt. You can actually start doubting yourself and asking, where did I go wrong?
Yes.
Did I give it my best? Is there something I would have done to protect my child? And actually that can also bring a lot of doubt in how you are going to parent the other children. In fact, one can actually almost get to a place where you cannot release your children to be with other children because you're not sure.
Wow.
And kind of transferring that fear to the children. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. That's why we are saying that it is important that we bring others in who will help the parent actually to be able to overcome that. And it is very, very important that parents in this kind of a situation get counseling so that they are helped to actually be able to overcome that and overcome the doubt and overcome the fear and overcome the blame games so that they can be able to move on and parent the other children. So it is possible that for sure one will go back and ask many questions, and that questions that can temporarily bring a lot of doubt in the parenting. Yeah.
I'll take you back to the blame game, Jane, in a short while, because sometimes the blame game may not necessarily be coming from others. It may be coming from yourself. You blame yourself. Maybe you left the child unattended and this is when this happened. Or the blame game may be between husband and wife. And wife is thinking, I left the child under your care. What were you thinking? What were you doing? If you had concentrated enough, our boy would still be here, our girl would still be here. So shortly we'll talk about how do you deal with that. If the blame game is between husband and wife, or if the blame game is internal and you're consistently blaming yourself for the disappearance of your child, how do you navigate through that? If you have any questions for us today, 20316 is the SMS line. WhatsApp number 0786 316 316. Parenting Tuesday, child abductions and kidnappings. What if they never come back? We have about 15 minutes before we come to the end of this discussion. So if you have any questions or any comments, please send them in now. It's Parenting Tuesday, wrapping up our series this month on child kidnappings and abductions. And we wrap up this session by asking the question, what if the child never comes back? How do you move on with your life? How do you deal with that? We've got two counseling psychologists with us via Zoom, Jane Gatia and Mary Waihoro, helping us to gain a deeper understanding of how to navigate through this. So earlier on, Jane, we were talking about the blame game. And the question then is, what if the blame game is internal? How do you deal with that? And what if the blame game is between husband and wife, meaning your marriage is being affected? How do you navigate through that?
Thank you. If that happened, which is bound to happen actually, I think it is not just a wish or an imagination. That can happen, and it has happened to many. If that were the case, then the two, especially the parents, if they are parenting together, and probably even worse still, if they were not parenting physically together, it can be very, very, devastating. Yes, it has always been very devastating. But then the two involved also need to be encouraged us to talk about it as well. Who thinks who did what? Let them verbalize so that it's not just you did, throwing of words here and there. It is best done if there is a third party. The role of the third party, who could even be a professional counseling psychologist like Mary and myself and others, it is always very important to listen to who thinks what. That expression, that talk therapy, we call it talk therapy, is very, very powerful because it helps the person to get it from inside themselves to outside. And they are able to throw all the attacks in a safe manner, as it were. They are able to blame one another. They are able also to attack, in quotes and quotes, each other, and that will be brought to an end. Somehow, they are also helped to explore what should have been done. What was the preferred scenario?
Yes.
What is the scenario now? And probably that also helps to set the future scenario. What if the child never comes, as you asked earlier on, James? How do you imagine life will be like? What is it that you have changed for you? How will you want to close that window? Because it remains like an open window, just in case someone comes in and they have somewhere to get in through. That's the psychological imagination. So it is very important that the blame game is spoken out. It is better off spoken out. Sometimes, if that opportunity is not there for the couple, for the parents to talk about it, for the relatives to talk about it, it can be kind of put inwards. It can be, self-blame as opposed to blaming that other person.
Okay.
And that makes things worse. Because as we talked about being compounded, the person will be more compounded. That's how people develop depression.
Yes.
That's how they develop other, mental and psychological disorders, and it end up to be clinical, and we get someone in hospital. I mean, we don't need to get there. The person needs to remain optimistic. And being optimistic could be either way. Yes, there could be hope, but there can also be hope against hope. And you cannot wait here until dawn. You need to wake up. You need to go. Maybe considering the casual ways of dealing with that. How would we bring this to an end? Do we call for a closing ceremony? Do we do what? But basically, if people believe in the existence of supernatural power, that is God, our creator, it is always good to focus there. Ultimately, God knows and God will take care. of every situation that we encounter.
Wow.
And that's, I think, is one way of going about it.
Okay. Mary, I'm wondering, how do you help your other children to come to terms with this? You know, do you, because I'm thinking it can get pretty uncomfortable, as opposed to, you know, if somebody died, we see a grave, we can take the children to the grave, they can be part of the funeral, there's closure there. But on this kind of issue, there's no closure. So do we keep talking about them at home? Do we keep hoping in our conversations that one day they may come back? Do we just bury them in our minds and in the minds of their brothers and sisters and move on? How do we help the brothers and sisters of this one to deal with it?
Right. Thank you, James. So, yes, so other than just focusing on the parent alone, then we are bringing in the aspect of the children.
Yes.
And we are saying that we need to keep an open conversation. We need to help the children talk about it. What is this that they are going through? Some of them may be getting intrusive dreams, you know, dealing, you know, walking in fear. You may find children not even pray with the other children. So it is important, first of all, as a, you know, as a support system or even the parent, to actually be on the lookout for the children. Are they exhibiting symptoms that, you know, they have not, that may indicate that they need help? And certainly children in this kind of a case would actually need help.
Yeah.
So it is very important that the children are actually allowed and encouraged to talk about it, talk about the loss, to talk about how they miss their sibling, to talk about the confusion that they may go through, to talk about the fears that they experience. Actually, you may find the children become even, you know, they cling on to the parents or cling on to each other, and, you know, they don't want to go out and mix with other children. So first of all, it's important that we get to have them speak and talk about what they are going through. And it's also very important that they also get counseling. We have, you know, the entire family being counseled together, but also having the children having their own individual sessions where they can each person speak about what they are going through. So it's very, very important that we recognize that children will also experience the same kind of you know, emotional turmoil, psychological torture that an adult would go through. So it's important that they are also not ignored. They are helped to speak about it. And it's important that we don't just take, you know, when they deviate from their normal behavior, we don't look at that as indiscipline, but we get to understand that they may also be going through, and they just be expressing perhaps what they are going through.
Yes.
Just sometimes they are not able to verbalize it if they are very young, but they could actually exhibit that in, you know, some not very normal behavior. So it's very, very important that we bring the children on board, even get to the level where now the whole family can be brought together by a professional counselor, and they can actually open up and talk about it, cry about it, mourn about it, and they'll be guided on how to go about it.
Okay. I've got time for one more question, Jane. This one is yours, 1 minute. You know, earlier on, we had an SMS of somebody who said they've been working for somebody who left home when they were 11, and they're now 35 and they've never returned home. I'm just wondering, there might be somebody who's listening into this conversation today, and they left home many, many years ago for whatever reason. They've never communicated, they've never gone back. It's like they died, but they're still alive. What would you tell that person, Jane?
Well, again, that is a very important question, but I would suggest there's a chance for reconciliation. Probably that sounds like an angry person, and anger can hang on there so long as we entertain it. There is a chance for reconciliation, because this person who left home that long ago and they are still alive somewhere, you can imagine what goes on in the minds of the loved ones that they left behind. And probably more so if they know that this person is alive somewhere but has totally refused to go back home. Maybe not to apologize, but for that possible reconciliation. Just to set their minds free and to set themselves out, you know, for other things that need to be done in life. While we are on that, James, allow me to say when we lose a child is abducted or is just lost, even an adult when they are just lost, it is not just that person they have lost. It is not that the child, it is not just the child that they have lost. Obviously, they have lost the physical child, but they have lost the future.
Ooh.
Remember, for every parent,
Yes.
a child represents the future. So the future is doomed, and that is why the closure is not that easy. What am I closing with? And someone has lost a sibling, if there are other children. So everybody have lost something. They have lost a companion, they have lost a playmate, and so on and so forth. And that's why it is important for this person, if they know they lost themselves, they need to get back. They need to be encouraged to go and set people free, as it were.
Wow. Jane Gatia, Mary Waihoro, thank you so much for your time this morning. Your information today has been great, and I know somebody somewhere has been helped. Unfortunately, we are out of time for Parenting Tuesday for today. God willing, we'll get to do it again next week. Have yourselves a great day.
This and more of our shows, log on to www.familymediaonline.com to enjoy a wide variety of programs, from current affairs to testimonials and features, pastoral and inspirational shows, kids entertainment, and so much more. Also stream live on www.familymedia.tv.